know that there's 120 species of animals mentioned by name in the Bible? I mean, that's astounding to me. And if you start going through them all, I went through all of them this week to see which ones were named. You can find them online. And you find, just starting with the letter A, ants, antelopes, apes, asps, asses, baboons, badgers, bats, bears, bees, birds, boar, buffalo, and buzzards. And that's just a few of the A's and B's. You got 24 more letters left in the alphabet. I mean, there's a lot of animals listed in Scripture. And it's clear that God takes delight in the animals. God really loves the animals. God created them. Now, I believe in evolution, but I believe that God, orchestrates, works through the evolutionary process and takes great delight in bringing forth the variety of species that inhabit our planet and those that have gone before that don't exist today, the ones that we marvel at when we look at their fossils. God took delight in all of those as well. God's care for the animals becomes a metaphor in Scripture for God's care for us. So God talks about himself as a shepherd and the people of Israel as the sheep. Jesus says, I am the good shepherd. And he talks about the people who are his followers as his sheep. So let's start by talking about fear. And I want to remind you that all of us are wired for fear, not just humans, but all vertebrates have a structure in their brain called the amygdala. There's actually two. These are almond-shaped structures, and I'll show you here in a brain. It's kind of spread out a little bit more than what actually happens in the human brain, but you can see the amygdala here and here. The amygdala bypass your reasoning, your higher level thinking, whenever there is a sense that there might be something that you should be afraid of. They're designed to protect you. Not just you, but again, every vertebrate has amygdala. So anything that has a spinal column has amygdala. All of the animals you think of that are your pets, they have the same function, the same capacity to sense with their eyes, their smell, their hearing, their sensation, something that might be a danger or a threat to them, and to protect them, they kick into high gear. I mean, instantly, before you can even process in your brain, your chemicals are flowing in your body, and it's making you ready to either fight, flee, or freeze, right? And this happens in the animal kingdom. It happens for us. So we are hardwired for fear, and that is a blessing until it's not. So what happens with many of us, well, with all of us, is we get afraid. We flinch at things that we don't need to be afraid of. I remember being in a safari in Africa and around a watering hole, and there were all of these animals, and it was just so amazing. This is years and years ago on a mission trip, but we ended by going to this safari, and every little sound, and the antelope were flinching, and the zebras were worried that the lions might be coming to get them. And generally they weren't. It's just that they were wired to be afraid of every single sound that they heard. Right, and that's how it is with us. You may remember the acronym for fear: false events appearing real. False events appearing real. Generally speaking, we're afraid of things that aren't going to happen. And I just remind you, we also have this natural capacity. We're sort of hardwired to catastrophize. We assume the worst thing is going to happen, and then we live paralyzed by our fear. We can't live that way. And so part of what we learn from our animals is, how do they respond when they're afraid? What do they do in order to overcome their fear? Now, I want to remind you, I've got two dogs. This is Maybelle. She's our oldest. She's 10 years old. And just love this little dog, and she is precious. I just took that picture this weekend. And then we have Rocky. So the next picture, you'll see Maybelle and Rocky. Rocky is 2 years old. Maybelle is 10 years old. And they are just an important part of our family. Now, when they see something or hear something, they notice something that they think might be a threat, the hackles come up, the hair on the back of their neck goes up. They begin barking like crazy. Last week, we saw a turtle in the middle of the road. They ran to the turtle, and, perceiving it as a possible threat, they're running. Now, what are they going to do? Fight, flee, or freeze? Well, there's two of them and one turtle, and that turtle's smaller. So somehow in their little, dog brains, they begin barking like crazy at that turtle, trying to scare it away. But that turtle didn't go running off. Instead, it just clamped closed its shell and went into hiding. See, the turtle's amygdala's kicked in, and it's terrified of these two dogs that are, barking at it. And so there's no way that our dogs were going to eat the turtle. It didn't really need to be afraid. And there was no way that turtle was a threat to our dogs. But you see, the whole scene was chaos due to fear. This is what happens in our lives as well. So what do we learn from dogs about how to overcome fear? On Monday of this week, we were at the Lake of the Ozarks, and our dogs, there was a thunderstorm that came up in the middle of the night. Well, it's like early morning, maybe 5 in the morning. I was sound asleep, Levon was sound asleep, and then suddenly I hear our dogs jump up on the bed. Well, Maybelle was already up there. Rocky jumps up on the bed, and he starts, we call it army crawling. He starts crawling closer and closer to our faces. And I can hear him kind of whining just a little bit. Now, he looks and he gets right up to our faces, and he sees that our eyes are closed. He knows, don't mess with them when their eyes are closed. It'll be worse than the thunder. But I could tell he's there, and, he's breathing right next to my face. And here's the thing. Once he could see my face, he settled down and he went back to sleep. Didn't matter that it was still thundering outside. As long as he was close to his master, he knew he was going to be okay. Are you listening? As once he was close to his master, he knew it was going to be okay. So that reminds me in Scripture how often we find ourselves afraid. I think about Psalm 56. So in Psalm 56, David, the superscript says that David had just been captured by his enemies, the Philistines, in the town of Gath. So he's been captured by his enemies, and then he writes this psalm in response. And in verse 3 and 4, it says, "Exalted One, whenever I'm afraid, I put my trust in you. In God, whose word I praise, I trust in God. I won't be afraid. What can mere flesh do to me?" I want you to notice this for just a moment. He's talking about being afraid. He is afraid. Whenever I'm afraid. David doesn't say, I'm never afraid because the Lord is my shepherd. No, when I am afraid. So we're going to be afraid sometimes in life. Even King David was afraid sometimes. At this point, he was not even yet king, I don't think. He was just on his pathway towards being king. But he was afraid of the Philistines. He was right to be afraid of the Philistines. So what does he do? He is going to put his trust in God whose word I praise. I want you to notice this. So he's writing this. It's set to music. He's going to sing it. He's going to sing it in his own mind. He's going to say the words. You see, he's going to say the words, and he's going to sing the words until it gets into his head and into his heart. And then he says this. He says, I'm not going to be afraid. I'm going to trust in God. I won't be afraid. What can mere flesh do to me? What could it do to him? The Philistines could kill him. They'd tear him apart limb by limb. So there was every reason to be afraid. He maybe was going to die, but he was still going to trust in God. He was going to trust in God that somehow, even if he should perish at the hands of the Philistines, he was going to be okay. Right? See, this is what that looks like when we trust in our master, when we're close to our master. How do we get close to God? Well, we sing. I mean, that's why worship is so important. Like, sometimes we think, well, I don't really need to go to church. I don't really need worship. Yes, you do. If you want to be close to your master, there's something about singing the words of Scripture, singing the Psalms that draws us close to God. There's something about praying and talking to God. There's something about reciting the words of Scripture. There's something about, hearing the truth about who God is, and something about being with God's people. All of those things help us to feel closer to God. The spiritual disciplines help us to feel closer to God, help us to know that we're near God. And when we're near God, we don't have to be afraid. I was thinking this week as I was watching the coverage of Camp Mystic and what happened, in the Guadalupe River and the terrible floods that happened there, and watching on one of the videos went viral of a bus of schoolgirls who were down at Camp Mystic, and as they were driving away, and one girl was filming out the window, and you could see all the devastation, and they were singing hymns to God as they were driving away. I was thinking about being in Haiti a number of years ago after the terrible earthquake that afflicted them. And when I was there, we'd gone down to meet with officials to figure out what our church and other United Methodist churches could do. And I was standing outside of a school building that had collapsed, bodies of children still inside the school building as they were taking us to show us these places and the devastation. And I listened and I heard the sound of parents and grandparents singing to God in the midst of their pain. Right, the closer we are to God, what we realize is, what can mere flesh do to me? And God, I trust, and I will not be afraid.
Thanks for tuning in to Making Sense of Faith with Adam Hamilton. Do you know someone wrestling with life's biggest questions? Share this episode with them, because the more people willing to embrace the hard questions, the better. Do you want to go deeper? You can visit makingsenseoffaith.com to find the show notes and additional resources. That's also where you can sign up to get the notes and resources delivered straight to your inbox. If you enjoyed this episode, hit subscribe and leave us a rating in your podcast player. That'll make sure that you get the latest episodes and help others find the podcast. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel. Hit that notification bell to catch future episodes and videos there. Until next time, remember that your questions matter. Doubts are normal, and making sense of faith is a lifelong journey. We'll see you on the next episode of Making Sense of Faith.